The city of Dallas glittered 41 floors below like scattered diamonds on black velvet the night Harry Aldridge decided to burn his life down, though he would not have called it that men like Harry rarely did. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his corner office at Aldridge Tower, a crystal glass of Macallan, 18, sweating in his right hand, his left adjusting the platinum cufflinks on his charcoal Brioni suit. The bespoke one, the one that cost more than most men in Texas made in a month. He was 42 years old, 6'2", square-jawed, and silver-templed. The kind of man business magazines called Time's Formidable Times, and the kind of man who had learned very early that the world bends for those who refuse to ask politely. He was the founder and chief executive officer of Aldridge Energy Solutions, a Dallas-based conglomerate with fingers in oil pipelines, renewable tech, and commercial real estate, a man worth, at last valuation, somewhere north of $800 million. He was also, as of that Tuesday evening in the spring of 2019, a man who had just signed his own ruin. He simply did not know it yet. Downstairs, in the marbled lobby of the same building, Janet Aldridge sat on a curved white bench beside a potted fiddle-leaf fig, her hands folded carefully in her lap, her cream-colored maternity dress brushing her swollen knees. She was 34 years old, honey-skinned and quiet-eyed, the kind of beautiful that did not announce itself but stayed with you long after a room had emptied. She wore pearl stud earrings and low cream heels she'd changed into at the car because her feet had been swelling since month 6. And in her purse, she carried a dinner reservation card for Eloise on the Park, his favorite restaurant, a table by the window, 40 minutes she'd spent writing the card inside. She was 7 months pregnant. She had come to surprise her husband. She did not know that upstairs her husband was already ending their marriage. Harry came down at 7:15, and he was not alone. Rose Cannon walked beside him in a floor-length emerald Versace gown with a slit to mid-thigh, 28 years old, all sharp angles and borrowed confidence. A runway model whose name had begun appearing in the same sentences as Time's It Girl, Times and Times Entrepreneur, Times and who had graced 3 magazine covers that calendar year. Her laugh carried across the lobby bright, unguarded, the laugh of a woman who had not yet learned what it cost to stand too close to a man like Harry Aldridge. Her long fingers, deep red nails, touched his forearm with the easy familiarity of someone who had already claimed something that did not yet legally belong to her. Janet saw them before they saw her. She rose slowly from the bench, one hand resting on her belly, the dinner card still sealed in her purse, and the world went very quiet the way it always does, in the breath before something irreversible. "Harry," she said. He stopped. Something moved across his face, not guilt, precisely, more the mild inconvenience of an unexpected calendar conflict. "Janet, I didn't know you were coming," he asked Rose to wait by the car. And then he walked Janet outside to the private courtyard behind the building where Jasmine climbed the stone wall, and the air smelled like something pastoral and false. And there, beneath that blooming backdrop, he told her, clean, efficient. He was filing for divorce. His attorney had already been briefed. He was sorry. He thought the marriage had run its course. He did not mention Rose by name, as though omission were a form of mercy. "I'm 7 months pregnant with your child, Harry," Janet said, her voice as level as a horizon. "I know," he said. "The lawyers will handle everything fairly." She looked at him for a long moment, at the man she had spent 6 years building a life beside, cooking Sunday breakfasts with, choosing paint colors with, holding through 2 miscarriages before this pregnancy finally, miraculously held, and she said nothing more. She picked up her purse. She walked to her white Lexus in the parking structure. She drove to the I-35 overpass, and there, alone in the amber wash of highway light, she wept until she could not breathe. The twins arrived on a Thursday in August 2019 at 3:41 inches the morning at Baylor University Medical Center. 2 boys, both healthy, both furiously loud, both bearing the dark, quiet eyes of a lineage Harry Aldridge had permanently disqualified himself from. Janet named them Lucas Benjamin Aldridge and Cole Benjamin Aldridge, reaching almost unconsciously for the middle name times Benjamin times as though something in her already knew, though she would not understand why for another 8 months. Harry did not come to the hospital. He sent 60 white orchid stems arranged in a crystal vase, delivered by courier, with a card that read, "Congratulations. My lawyers will be in touch regarding the custody framework." That same afternoon, Rose posted a photograph to Instagram from the terrace of their new uptown Dallas penthouse yellow sundress. Champagne flute. The city spread golden behind her, caption simply, "New chapter. Grateful." The post received 47,000 likes before midnight. Janet's sister Clara sat in a yellow plastic hospital chair beside her bed all night, still wearing the scrubs she had rushed over in, and held her hand without a single word, because some silences are the loudest forms of love available to us. The letter came on a Wednesday in April 2020. Arriving at Janet's rented 2-bedroom on the east side of Fort Worth, while both boys slept in the next room, and a half-eaten plate of rice cooled beside her laptop, where she had been reviewing a catering invoice for the small event planning business she had built from scratch to keep herself solvent while the divorce settlement ground through arbitration. The letter came from a firm she did not recognize, Whitmore, Graves, and Okafor LLC, out of Houston, and she almost didn't open it. Inside, 2 pages of dense legal language stated that a Mr. Benjamin Ezekiel Wood of Houston, Texas, founder and chairman of Wood Petroleum International, estimated net worth $4.2 billion had, through a private genealogical investigation commissioned 18 months prior, strong reason to believe that Miss Janet Elaine Morrow Aldridge was his biological daughter, born in Dallas in 1985 to a woman named Dolores Morrow, prior to Mr. Bleeder. Wood's knowledge of the pregnancy, and that he was respectfully requesting she consider a DNA meeting at her earliest convenience. Janet sat at her kitchen table for 45 minutes without moving. Benjamin Wood. Ben Wood. The name was not unknown in Texas. It appeared in Forbes, on the walls of the Petroleum Engineering Building at UT Austin, on the Black Hawk on Redfield logo of gas stations across 4 states. She had driven past his billboards on the highway for years, without once imagining they were billboards for her father. She called the firm the next morning. They met in the drawing room of his River Oaks estate in Houston in May 2020, a room of dark wood paneling and leather chairs, and oil paintings of Texas landscapes at dusk. Ben Wood was 71 years old, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, with the large, steady hands of a man who had built things long before he bought them. And he wore a simple navy blazer with no tie, which Janet would later learn was how he dressed when he was nervous. He stood when she entered, his eyes dark, like hers, like Lucas's, like Cole's, went very still, as though they recognized something they had been searching for across a very long distance. The DNA had confirmed what both of them already somehow knew in the room before either spoke. "I looked for your mother," he said, after they had sat across from each other for what felt like a geological age. "When I found out years later that she'd been pregnant, she had moved. I couldn't find her." His voice carried the particular weight of a man who has rehearsed a sentence for decades and still finds it insufficient. "She passed," Janet said. 4 years ago." He closed his eyes briefly. "I'm sorry." "So am I," she said, and she meant it in more directions than either of them could name. They spoke for 3 hours that first afternoon, and by the time the Houston sun had dropped behind the magnolias, something ancient and broken had begun, slowly and improbably, to knit itself back together. What followed unfolded the way consequence always does, not in a single dramatic detonation, but in a quiet, patient, methodical accumulation of pressure. Ben Wood was not a man of spectacle. He was a man of infrastructure. He did not arrive in Dallas with threats or declarations. He made phone calls. He attended board meetings. He had spent 40 years building relationships with every significant financial institution, regulatory body, and energy partnership in the state of Texas, and he began deliberately, precisely, without announcement, to withdraw them from Harry Aldridge's orbit. Aldridge Energy's primary refinancing deal, a $200 million package through Southwestern Capital Partners, collapsed without explanation in November 2020. A joint venture with Mesa Verde Pipeline, 3 years in negotiation, evaporated in January 2021 when Mesa Verde's chairman abruptly declined to continue discussions, citing no specific reason. 2 of Harry's longest-serving board members resigned in the same week, citing strategic misalignment. His stock price, listed since 2017, fell 34% in 6 weeks. Harry hired investigators. He suspected a competitor, perhaps someone out of Houston, he told his attorneys, someone with reach. He did not, for several months, think to suspect the quiet woman in the cream maternity dress he had walked away from in a jasmine-lined courtyard 2 years prior. By February, the SEC had opened a preliminary inquiry into certain Aldridge Energy transactions from 2017 and 2018 transactions that had been, it emerged, improperly classified in the original public filings. The source of the tip remained officially anonymous. By March, Rose had packed her things from the uptown penthouse, the Le Creuset, the Vitamix, the framed Slim Aaron's prints, and flown to Miami for a brand partnership. Her final Instagram post from the penthouse terrace showed the yellow sundress again, the champagne glass again, the city behind her again, and the caption read only, "Onwards." Harry was not tagged. Harry was, by then, standing alone in a gutted penthouse looking at a Dallas skyline that no longer felt like it belonged to him, and something in him, some final, load-bearing thing cracked clean through. He reached her by phone on a Tuesday evening in April 2021. She almost didn't answer. Janet. Harry. A long silence opened between them, wide enough to hold everything that had happened and everything that could not be undone. Outside her Fort Worth window, Lucas and Cole were asleep 18 months old, beginning to walk, beginning to arrange the first stubborn syllables of language into something resembling meaning. "I didn't know," he said at last, "about your father. I didn't know who you were." "I know," she said. "If I had, it wouldn't have mattered," she said. quietly and without heat, without the anger she had every right to still be holding. Because I wasn't worth knowing before I had a billionaire for a father. And that's something I can't forgive, Harry. That's not something I'm supposed to forgive. He had no answer for that. The truth is, neither did she, not entirely, not cleanly, because regret, she had learned, was not reserved only for the guilty. Sometimes the wronged carried it too, for the years given in good faith, for the love that had been real on her side even when the man was not, for the future she had painted in careful colors and lost overnight, without warning or preparation. She ended the call. She walked to the boys' room and stood in the doorway in the dark, and looked at her son's Lucas with his blanket kicked off. Cole curled around his one-eyed stuffed elephant, and she listened to them breathe. She was not triumphant. She was not at peace. Not fully. She was something more honest than both. She was a woman who had survived being thrown away by someone who never understood what he held, who had been found by a father she never knew she had, who had rebuilt a life in a rented house with a catering invoice and 2 small boys, and nothing given to her that she had not earned in the particular brutal economy of starting over. Outside, Texas went on enormous and indifferent, and lit with the kind of stars that make you feel both very small and strangely held. And somewhere across the city, Harry Aldridge sat alone in the wreckage of everything he had chosen, learning, too late and at great cost, the oldest lesson the world has to teach. That the things we dismiss without looking, the quiet ones, the ones in cream dresses with pearls in their ears and cards in their purses and love they should never have had to prove, those are always the things that mattered most. End